The autumn sun cast long shadows across Chicago's downtown as Alexandra Reynolds strode through the glass doors of Reynolds Technologies. The click of her heels against marble echoed through the lobby, turning heads without her noticing. At 32, she'd mastered the art of commanding a
I could
room
stay
without
here
trying.
forever.
Her tailored charcoal suit and the determined set of her jaw sent a clear message: CEO first, everything else second. The morning schedule loomed in her mind: quarterly projections, R&D updates, and the meeting that could change everything. Takeshi Corp, the Japanese tech giant, was considering a $200 million investment that would cement Reynolds Technologies' global expansion plans. Alex checked her watch, 20 minutes until the Japanese delegation arrived, just enough time to review her notes one last time. The elevator whisked her to the 38th floor where Victoria Hayes, her CFO and closest confidant, waited with a tablet and a concerned expression. Victoria handed over the tablet without preamble. Revised projections, a spreadsheet of precisely calculated futures that had occupied three analysts for 2 weeks. And yet it wasn't the numbers that concerned Victoria. A message from her contact at Takeshi Corp had arrived late last night. Alex's eyes narrowed as she read. Cultural concerns, traditional values, family stability, code words that had nothing to do with technology and everything to do with her personal life, or lack thereof. The message was clear between the lines. Takeshi's board had reservations about investing in a company led by a single woman with no family ties. Alex felt heat rising in her chest, a familiar anger she'd learned to suppress since taking over from her father 3 years ago. The conference room doors opened at precisely 9 o'clock. Mr. Takeshi and his delegation entered with formal bows, which Alex returned with practiced precision. Pleasantries were exchanged, presentations delivered, questions answered with confident expertise. For 90 minutes, the meeting progressed exactly as planned, until it didn't. Mr. Takeshi cleared his throat during the final discussion. We appreciate your impressive technical achievements, Ms. Reynolds, but my board has concerns about long-term leadership stability. Alex maintained her professional smile. I assure you our succession planning is robust. The company has thrived under my leadership for 3 years, with consistent growth exceeding industry standards. Mr. Takeshi nodded politely. The numbers speak for themselves. But in our experience, the most reliable leaders are those with family commitments. They understand long-term thinking and responsibility. The implication hung in the air like a fog that wouldn't dissipate. Alex felt Victoria tense beside her. Mr. Takeshi continued his expression, apologetic but firm. We value Ms. Reynolds' capabilities, but our cultural perspective places importance on family stability. Without that foundation, how can we trust our $200 million investment? Japanese companies consider decades ahead, not just quarterly profits. The meeting concluded with diplomatic smiles and promises to reconnect in 3 months. As the delegation departed, Alex remained seated, fingers pressed against the polished conference table, controlling her breathing. Victoria closed the door. Well, that was illuminating. Apparently, we've time-traveled back to 1955. Alex stared at the empty chairs where the Takeshi delegation had sat. This is beyond ridiculous. It's 2025, not the Dark Ages. They're judging my ability to run a technology company based on my marital status. She pushed back from the table and stood walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 3 years of rebuilding her father's company, doubling market share, pioneering breakthrough technologies, all potentially meaningless because she hadn't found time between 18-hour workdays to find a husband. The intercom buzzed. Malcolm Hayes, her COO, requested an immediate meeting. 20 minutes later, Alex sat in her office listening to Malcolm outline the board's concerns. Richard Reynolds' handpicked successor was growing nervous. Malcolm, 45 and impeccably groomed, had coveted the CEO position since before Richard's retirement. Now he barely concealed his satisfaction at her predicament. The board has been monitoring the Takeshi situation closely. They're concerned about the investment falling through. Alex crossed her arms. And what exactly do they propose I do? Find a husband in the classified ads? Malcolm's smile didn't reach his eyes. Actually, they've suggested a more strategic approach. Gregory Winter's son just returned from London. Harvard Business School, family connections, impeccable pedigree. A dinner could be arranged. The suggestion hung in the air like a bad odor. Alex stared at Malcolm until his smile faltered. Let me be crystal clear, Malcolm. I will not arrange a marriage like some medieval princess securing an alliance. This company succeeds on innovation and execution, not on my personal life. Malcolm raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course, just conveying the board's concerns. But they've given you 3 months to demonstrate stability, or they'll convene a special session to revisit leadership questions. I'm just looking out for the company's best interests. After Malcolm left, Alex called her father. Richard Reynolds, recovering from heart surgery at his Lake Michigan estate, listened without interrupting. It's absurd, Dad. Takeshi won't invest because I'm single. The board is threatening my position over this. Richard's voice sounded weaker than she remembered, but his words were clear. The business world hasn't changed as much as we'd like to think, Alex. Traditional investors like Takeshi look beyond spreadsheets. They want to know who they're trusting their money with. Alex paced her office. So what exactly am I supposed to do? Richard sighed. I don't care who you marry, sweetheart. I just want you to be happy and keep what we've built. Don't let them take away everything we've worked for. The call ended with promises to visit soon. Alex sat at her desk, staring at the family photo taken before her mother's death 15 years ago. The three of them smiling on a sailboat, her father's passion before Reynolds Technologies consumed his life, before it became her life too. Her intercom buzzed again. Car service reporting an engine malfunction. Her Bentley would require servicing. Perfect end to a perfect day. Alex gathered her laptop and coat, mentally calculating how this would impact her evening schedule. The private elevator carried her to the underground parking where her driver waited with bad news. The car wouldn't start at all. They'd need to have it towed to the nearest service center. Rain had started falling by the time Alex stepped onto Michigan Avenue Irritation Building as passing cabs ignored her hail already occupied with rush hour passengers. The sky darkened further, and what began as drizzle transformed into a downpour. She ducked under a nearby awning, scrolling through her phone for the nearest luxury car service, when the distinct sound of a sputtering engine caught her attention. Her Bentley being towed by an older model pickup truck passed slowly in the congested traffic. The truck pulled into an alley beside a brick building with a weathered sign, Miller Auto Repair. Without better options, Alex followed her Italian leather shoes splashing through puddles. The garage was unexpectedly clean for an urban repair shop. Tools organized methodically on pegboards, floors swept despite the constant battle against grease and grime. A radio played classic rock at low volume. Her Bentley sat in the center bay hood already open. A pair of worn work boots protruded from underneath the vehicle. Excuse me, I'm Alexandra Reynolds. That's my car. The boots slid out, revealing their owner. Jack Miller didn't look up immediately, focusing on wiping his hands with a shop rag. Mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with this solid build of someone whose strength came from work, rather than a gym membership. His dark hair was cut short, practical rather than stylish. When he finally met her gaze, Alex was struck by eyes that seemed too observant for a mechanic assessing her with unexpected intelligence. Ms. Reynolds, your driver mentioned engine trouble. I've got a preliminary diagnosis, but I need to confirm a few things. His voice carried none of the excessive deference she was accustomed to. Just straightforward competence. Alex checked her watch. I need this resolved quickly. Can you tell me how long repairs will take? Jack stood revealing his full height, several inches taller than her, despite her heels. He moved to the engine compartment with practiced efficiency. Depends on what I find. But you've got a rare problem. Fuel injection systems malfunctioning in a way the dealership probably wouldn't catch. They'd likely replace the entire engine, charge you $30,000 in 3 weeks without your car. Alex raised an eyebrow, and you can do better. Jack didn't look up from the engine. I can isolate the actual problem. Probably fix it for under $5,000, have you back on the road by tomorrow afternoon. There was no sales pitch, no attempt to impress or intimidate with technical jargon. Just confidence, born of experience. Alex found herself intrigued despite her frustration with the day's events. The front door of the shop burst open, letting in a gust of wind and rain, along with a small figure in a bright yellow raincoat. Sophie Miller, 6 years old and vibrating with the energy only children possess, skidded to a stop when she noticed the visitor. "Bo, I got 100 on my science test," Miss Patterson said. "My drawing of the water cycle was the best she'd ever—" Sophie stopped mid-sentence, suddenly shy in the presence of a stranger. Her dark hair hung in damp curls escaping from her hood, and she clutched a slightly soggy paper with a prominent red 100 circled at the top. Jack's entire demeanor transformed. The focused mechanic instantly became a proud father, his smile revealing laugh lines that hadn't been visible before. "Hey, Soph, that's amazing." He knelt to examine the test paper with exaggerated interest, giving the child his complete attention despite Alex's presence. The interaction caught Alex off guard, something about the gentleness in his rough hands as he carefully held the paper, the genuine pride in his expression. Sophie, this is Ms. Reynolds. Her car needs some special work, so she'll be our customer for a bit. Sophie studied Alex with the frank curiosity of childhood. You're really tall and pretty. Alex found herself smiling despite her earlier irritation. Thank you. Congratulations on your test. The water cycle is pretty complicated science. Sophie beamed. I'm going to be a scientist when I grow up. Or maybe an astronaut. Or maybe both. Jack straightened up, ruffling his daughter's hair affectionately. Why not both? Go hang up your coat and get started on homework. I'll be done here in about 20 minutes. As Sophie darted to a small desk set up in the office area, she called over her shoulder. Alex's eyebrows rose in surprise. The little girl had switched effortlessly into Vietnamese, clearly assuming Alex wouldn't understand. Jack noticed her reaction. Sorry about that. Her grandmother, my late wife's mother, spoke Vietnamese. Sophie picks up languages like she's collecting them. She knows I don't understand much, so sometimes she tests people to see if they do. Alex nodded. She asked if I knew you fixed tanks in Iraq, and said you can fix anything. It was Jack's turn to look surprised. You speak Vietnamese. Business school in Singapore. I had Vietnamese roommates for 2 years. Jack nodded, returning his attention to the engine with a slight smile. The military feels like another lifetime ago. These days I just fix problems with 4 wheels. There was something in his tone, not quite regret, but a distinct sense of distance from his former life. Alex found herself curious about this man who had so obviously reinvented himself, but her phone vibrated with a message from Victoria. The board wanted an emergency session to discuss the Takeshi meeting. How much do I owe you for the assessment? Jack closed the hood. Nothing for looking. I'll call you tomorrow with the full estimate before proceeding. Alex handed him her business card. Call my assistant with the details. I'll need the car as soon as possible. As she turned to leave, arranging for a car service on her phone, Sophie's voice called from the office area. Bye, Ms. Reynolds. I hope your car feels better soon. The childish personification of the vehicle made Alex smile again, a brief respite from the day's frustrations. She waved to the little girl and stepped back into the rain, already refocusing on the board meeting ahead. The next morning dawned cold and clear. Alex had spent half the night reviewing contingency plans if the Takeshi deal fell through. The board had been restless during the emergency session, Malcolm cleverly stoking their concerns while appearing supportive. She needed that investment. Without it, the ambitious expansion into quantum computing would stall, leaving an opening for competitors. A call from an unknown number interrupted her morning briefing with Victoria. Ms. Reynolds, Jack Miller from Miller Auto. I've diagnosed your vehicle. The fuel pressure regulator is failing, but it's triggered a cascade problem with the injection timing. I can repair it for 4,800 parts and labor. Compared to the dealership's engine replacement, you're saving about 25,000. The straightforward assessment was refreshing after a morning of corporate politics. That sounds reasonable. How soon can it be ready? End of day today. I've sourced the parts already. Alex was surprised by the timeline. That's unusually fast. I have contacts at specialty shops, and I prioritized it. Something in his tone, not boastful, simply matter-of-fact, made her curious. Why would you prioritize my car over others? A brief pause. Your driver mentioned you run Reynolds Technologies. My daughter's school uses your educational software. It's helped her reading comprehension significantly. Seems fair to return the favor. The simple explanation caught Alex off guard. In her world, favors always came with expectations attached. This straightforward reciprocity was almost foreign. I appreciate that. I'll send my driver to collect it this afternoon. After ending the call, Alex stared out her office window, thoughts unexpectedly lingering on the mechanic and his daughter. There had been something refreshingly genuine about them both. No agenda, no manipulation, just authenticity. Victoria interrupted her thoughts. Earth to Alex, we were discussing the contingency financing. Alex refocused, pushing thoughts of Jack Miller aside. Until 3 hours later, her assistant forwarded a message. The Bentley was ready for pickup. The final invoice was $4,000, even $800 less than the estimate. A note was attached, found a better source for the regulator, passing the savings to you. Thanks for being patient with Sophie yesterday. J. Miller. Alex stared at the message. When was the last time anyone had voluntarily reduced a bill? In her experience, initial estimates only moved in one direction upward. The gesture, small as it was, stuck with her through afternoon meetings and budget reviews. That evening, driving her repaired Bentley home, Alex took a detour. The rational part of her mind questioned the impulse, but something drew her back to Miller Auto. Perhaps it was simple curiosity or the need to understand this small anomaly in her otherwise predictable world. The garage was still open, though most bays were empty. Jack's pickup truck remained parked outside. Alex pulled in, noticing immediately that something was wrong. Jack was pacing near the office area, phone pressed to his ear, his expression tense. Sophie sat on a bench nearby, unusually subdued, her small face pinched with discomfort. When Jack saw Alex, surprise momentarily displaced his worry. "Ms. Reynolds, is there a problem with the car?" "No, What's happening? Is everything all right?" Jack ended his call, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Our regular sitter canceled last minute. Sophie's not feeling well, her asthma's acting up, but I have to finish this transmission rebuild tonight. The customer needs it for work tomorrow morning, and he depends on this truck for his livelihood." Sophie attempted a brave smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm okay, Beau. I can just sit here quietly." Jack knelt beside her, gently checking her forehead for fever. "You're wheezing, kiddo. You need your medication and rest, not a garage bench." Alex surprised herself with their next words. "I could take her home. If you trust me, where does she need to go?" Jack looked up, clearly caught off guard. "I couldn't ask you to." "You're not asking. I am offering. Where does she need to go?" A silent evaluation passed between them. Jack weighing his desperate situation against trusting his daughter with someone who was essentially a stranger, albeit one with a verifiable identity. Alex waiting, equally surprised by her own impulse. Finally, Jack nodded. "Our apartment's just 3 blocks east. She needs her inhaler and the nebulizer treatment. I'd only need about 90 minutes to finish this job." Sophie looked between them, her breathing audibly labored now. "I can show Ms. Reynolds how the medicine works. Nurse Kelly taught me last time." The child's attempted self-sufficiency broke something in Alex's heart. She held out her hand. "Come on, Sophie. Let's get you feeling better while your dad finishes his important work." The walk to the Miller apartment was slow, accommodating Sophie's breathing difficulties. The building was modest but well-maintained, a pre-war structure with character but minimal amenities. Their third-floor apartment reflected Jack's ordered mind, simple furnishings, meticulously organized with touches of warmth in the homemade art projects displayed on walls and refrigerator. Sophie directed Alex to her medication with practiced familiarity no 6-year-old should possess. The nebulizer hummed to life, creating a mist that Sophie breathed through a mask, her small body gradually relaxing as the medication took effect. Alex sat beside her on the worn but clean sofa, noticing framed photos on the side table. A beautiful Vietnamese woman smiled beside Jack in wedding attire. The same woman held infant Sophie. Family portraits tracked Sophie's growth until abruptly the woman disappeared from the timeline. "That's my mom. She's in heaven now." Sophie's voice was muffled behind the nebulizer mask, but her eyes watched Alex closely. "She had a car accident when I was 3. Bo says she's watching over us like a guardian angel." Alex felt a pang of recognition. The same abrupt absence existed in her own family photos after her mother's death. "I lost my mom too, when I was 17. Sophie reached over, patting Alex's hand with startling empathy. "That's sad. It's hard, isn't it?" Sometimes I forget what Mom's voice sounded like. The simple honesty pierced Alex's carefully maintained composure. "Yes, it is hard, but it sounds like your dad takes very good care of you." Sophie nodded, her eyelids growing heavy as the medication took effect. "He works really, really hard, sometimes too hard. He gets tired but pretends he's not." Within minutes, Sophie had drifted to sleep, the nebulizer mask still covering her small face. Alex gently removed it, noticing the medical bills stacked neatly on the kitchen counter. Her professional curiosity got the better of her. A quick glance revealed staggering amounts, payment plans, and notations for insurance claims partially denied. The apartment told its own story. No television, just bookshelves filled with children's literature and engineering manuals. A desk in the corner held a laptop that had seen better days. The refrigerator featured a payment calendar with meticulously noted due dates for various bills. This was a household operating on razor-thin margins with priorities clearly centered around Sophie's well-being. Jack arrived exactly 90 minutes later, quietly unlocking the door, his expression shifting from exhaustion to relief when he saw Sophie sleeping peacefully. "Her breathing sounds better. Thank you for doing this. I know it's completely outside the normal customer-mechanic relationship." Alex stood gathering her coat and purse. "She's a special little girl. Very brave." Jack moved to the kitchen, washing grease from his hands with the efficiency of long practice. Can I offer you some coffee? It's the least I can do. Against her better judgment, Alex accepted. The kitchen was small but functional. Jack prepared coffee with the same focused attention he'd given the Bentley's engine measuring grounds, precisely his movements economical. Sophie mentioned her mother. I'm sorry for your loss. Jack's shoulders tensed momentarily before he nodded. 3 years ago. Drunk driver. Sarah was dropping off cupcakes at Sophie's preschool. There was a world of grief in those simple sentences delivered with practice control. Alex recognized the tone she'd used similar detachment when discussing her own mother's cancer. Sophie has her smile. I saw it in the photos. Jack handed her a mug of coffee. She has her determination too, and her asthma, unfortunately. Sarah's family had a history of respiratory issues. He sat across from her at the small kitchen table. So what brought you back to the shop? There couldn't be another problem with the Bentley already. Alex considered deflecting but found herself answering honestly. Curiosity, I suppose. You reduced the bill. Nobody does that. Jack shrugged. I quoted you honestly based on what I knew at the time. When circumstances changed, the price did too. That's just fair business. The simplicity of his ethical framework was almost jarring compared to the complex calculations of advantage that dominated Alex's corporate world. You mentioned Iraq earlier. Were you a mechanic in the military too? Jack took a sip of coffee. Naval engineering, actually. 8 years of service, specialized in vehicle maintenance for Marine units. Started as a way to pay for college, turned into a career until Sophie needed me full-time. There was clearly more to that story, but Alex didn't press. Do you have family to help with her? Sarah's mother used to help, but she moved to Florida for her health last year. Our neighbor, Mrs. Parker, watches Sophie after school most days, but she's getting older. It's getting harder for her to manage the stairs to our apartment. He gestured toward the stack of medical bills. Sophie's asthma needs better management. The specialists recommend a treatment regimen our insurance only partially covers. I'm making it work, but he trailed off, clearly uncomfortable discussing financial difficulties. Alex found herself studying him with new interest. This was a man accustomed to solving problems independently, carrying burdens without complaint. The moment was interrupted by Alex's phone. Victoria texting about tomorrow's agenda, the real world intruding on this strange interlude. I should go. Thank you for the coffee. Jack walked her to the door. Thank you for helping Sophie. That was unexpected. As Alex reached the hallway, Sophie's sleepy voice called from the couch. Bye, Ms. Reynolds. You make good medicine. The innocent comment stayed with Alex during her drive home to her penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. The contrast between the Miller's modest apartment and her luxury residence couldn't have been starker. Yet something about their home had felt more genuine than her carefully designed living space, which functioned more as a showcase and occasional sleeping quarters than an actual home. Well, the next morning brought fresh complications. Malcolm had arranged a strategic introduction to Gregory Winter's son despite her explicit refusal. The presumption infuriated her, but the board's 3-month ultimatum left little room for principled stands. She needed to demonstrate stability without compromising her dignity or autonomy. As her car navigated morning traffic, Alex's mind drifted to an unlikely solution. The thought formed slowly, initially dismissed as absurd, then reconsidered with increasing strategic calculation. By the time she reached Reynolds Technologies, a plan had taken shape, an unorthodox one that addressed multiple problems simultaneously. Victoria noticed her changed demeanor immediately. You've got that look, the one that terrifies the board. Alex smiled. I think I've found a solution to our Takeshi problem, but I need you to run a background check first, thoroughly but discreetly. When Victoria saw the name, her eyebrows shot upward. The mechanic, Alex, what exactly are you planning? 3 days later, Alex stood outside Miller Auto watching through the large bay doors as Jack worked underneath an elderly Volvo. The background check had revealed exactly what she'd expected. Distinguished military service, associate's degree in mechanical engineering, exemplary credit despite tight circumstances, no criminal record, no vices or gambling, just a dedicated single father doing his best in difficult circumstances. The report had also uncovered something unexpected, a pending bank notice. Miller Auto was 90 days from foreclosure. Jack had leveraged everything to keep the business afloat while covering his Sophie's medical expenses. His razor-thin margins had finally collapsed under the pressure. Alex entered the garage, noticing immediately that Sophie was sitting at her homework desk in the office area wearing a surgical mask. Jack emerged from beneath the Volvo, wiping his hands, his expression shifting to surprise when he recognized her. Ms. Reynolds, the Bentley's running smoothly, I hope. Perfectly. But I'm not here about the car. I have a business proposition for you, Mr. Miller. Is there somewhere we could speak privately? Jack glanced at Sophie, who waved cheerfully despite her mask. Let me take my lunch break a little early. We can talk in the office. The small office was neat but cramped, dominated by filing cabinets and repair manuals. Jack cleared a chair for her, remaining standing himself. I'm listening. Alex took a deep breath. What I'm about to propose will sound unusual, perhaps even offensive, but I ask that you hear me out completely. Jack crossed his arms, wariness replacing his professional demeanor. That's not the most reassuring start to a conversation. Alex nodded, acknowledging his concern. Reynolds Technologies is negotiating a significant investment with Takeshi Corporation. However, they've expressed reservations about investing in a company led by an unmarried woman. They consider it a stability risk. Jack's expression darkened. That's ridiculous. What does your marital status have to do with running a tech company? Exactly my reaction. Unfortunately, my board shares these concerns. They've given me 3 months to demonstrate personal stability or risk losing my position. Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes. And this concerns me. How exactly? Alex met his gaze directly. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement, a marriage of convenience lasting 1 year. You would receive a monthly stipend equivalent to an executive administrator's salary, comprehensive health insurance for you and Sophie, and ownership of this building and business transferred to you free and clear at the conclusion of our arrangement. Jack stared at her incredulity, battling with something else in his expression. You want to hire me to be your husband? A business arrangement, temporary and strictly defined. You help me secure my position in the Takeshi investment. I help you secure financial stability and proper health care for Sophie. Jack paced the small office, running a hand through his hair. This is insane. You don't even know me. I know enough. You're honorable, hardworking, and Sophie's well-being is your priority. The background check was quite thorough. His head snapped up. You ran a background check on me. Of course. I wouldn't propose this arrangement without due diligence. Your military record is exemplary. Your financial difficulties stem from Sophie's medical needs, not poor judgment. Jack's jaw tightened. So you know I'm about to lose this place too. Alex nodded. The bank notice appeared in county records. 90 days until foreclosure. Jack turned away, staring through the office window at Sophie, who was carefully completing her homework, despite the mask covering half her small face. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. I promised Sarah I'd always take care of Sophie, that I'd give her every opportunity. Now I'm about to lose the business, maybe even our apartment. Her treatments keep getting more expensive. The specialist says she needs a new medication that costs... He stopped himself, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm failing her. Alex stepped closer. You're not failing her. You're facing impossible choices that no parent should have to make. I'm offering a solution that involves lying to her, teaching her that marriage is a business transaction. Alex considered her words carefully. We could tell Sophie the truth in age-appropriate terms, that we're special friends helping each other. No different from you helping Mrs. Parker with her groceries in exchange for childcare. Jack seemed unconvinced. And what about the rest of the world? Your fancy corporate board and Japanese investors? To them, we present as a committed couple who married after a whirlwind romance. A love story that sells magazines. The devoted single father meets the career-focused executive. They find unexpected balance together. The skepticism in Jack's expression didn't waver. And what exactly would this marriage entail? Where would we live? What would people expect? For appearances, we would need to cohabitate. My penthouse has 3 bedrooms, plenty of space for privacy. Sophie would have access to the best schools and medical care in Chicago. You could continue running your business without financial pressure. After 1 year, we quietly divorce, citing irreconcilable differences or growing apart. No drama, no scandal. Jack's laugh held no humor. You've really thought this through, haven't you? It's what I do. Identify problems, create solutions, execute efficiently. And what about Sophie? She's not a business problem to solve. She's a little girl who's already lost her mother. The challenge struck home. Alex hadn't fully considered the emotional impact on Sophie. She thought quickly. You're right. Sophie's well-being comes first. We would move slowly, introduce changes gradually. She could maintain her relationship with Mrs. Parker, keep connections to her current life. The transition would be presented as an adventure, not a replacement for what she's lost. Jack studied her with those observant eyes that seemed to see beyond her corporate persona. Why me? You could find 1,000 men in Chicago willing to make this deal, probably for less trouble and money. The question caught Alex off guard. She had asked herself the same thing repeatedly over the past 3 days. The logical answer was convenience and opportunity. Jack had appeared at precisely the right moment with the right combination of needs and character. But something deeper had influenced her choice, something she hesitated to examine too closely. You're genuine. In my world, that's rare and valuable. Sophie adores you. That speaks volumes about your character. And frankly, you have no connections to my corporate sphere, which minimizes complications and conflicts of interest. Jack turned back to the window, watching Sophie remove her mask to drink from her water bottle. His expression reflected the weight of his responsibility, the impossible calculation of a father trying to determine what would truly serve his daughter best. I'd need conditions, non-negotiable ones. Alex nodded, relief flooding through her. He was considering it. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until that moment. Name them. We don't lie to Sophie. We explain in terms she can understand. I keep working, no playing trophy husband. My business, my identity. Sophie's routine stays as consistent as possible. Her needs come first and always. Agreed. Anything else? Separate bedrooms. This is a business arrangement, not anything else. Alex nodded quickly, ignoring the unexpected flicker of something like disappointment. Of course. My guest suite would be yours entirely. Complete privacy. Jack took a deep breath, his decision visibly settling over him. One more condition. We put everything in writing. Clear terms, clear timeline, clear exit strategy. I already have contracts drafted. My lawyers can incorporate your conditions. Jack shook his head, a hint of dry humor returning. Of course you do. Has anyone ever told you that you're slightly terrifying, Ms. Reynolds? Alex found herself smiling. Only everyone I've ever worked with. And if we're getting married, even on paper, you should probably start calling me Alex. Their eyes met across the small office, an unexpected moment of connection amid the strangest negotiation either had ever conducted. Jack extended his hand formally. I still think this is crazy, but for Sophie, I'll do it. Alex took his hand, noting the strength in his grip, the calluses that spoke of years of manual labor. Thank you, Jack. I believe this arrangement will benefit us both. As their hands separated, Sophie's voice called from outside the office. Bo, can I have lunch now? Mrs. Parker brought muffins. Jack's expression softened immediately. I'll be right there, Soph. He turned back to Alex, the weight of their agreement evident in his gaze. I hope we both know what we're getting into. Alex wished she could offer certainty, but in truth, she was venturing far outside her realm of expertise. She'd structured the arrangement like a business deal with clear terms and projected outcomes. But something told her that the human elements, Sophie's heart, Jack's pride, her own unexpected reactions to them both, wouldn't conform neatly to contractual clauses. Welcome to the most unconventional merger in Chicago business history, Mr. Miller. The autumn sunlight filtering through the garage windows caught the dust motes swirling between them, illuminating the invisible lines of fate that had somehow drawn them together in this unlikely alliance. Whether it would lead to disaster or salvation remained to be seen. But for now, they had a contract to draft, a story to create, and a little girl waiting for lunch, an unexpectedly ordinary beginning to the most extraordinary arrangement of their lives. Sophie sat cross-legged on the polished marble floor of Alex's penthouse, surrounded by moving boxes, her small face scrunched in concentration as she arranged her stuffed animals in a semicircle. This is your new home too, she whispered to them. It's really big, but don't be scared. Jack watched from his kitchen doorway, a box of dishes in his arms, his heart constricting at his daughter's attempt to comfort her toys when she herself was navigating enormous change. 2 weeks had passed since he'd agreed to Alex's proposal, 14 days of contracts, preparations, and careful explanations to Sophie about their special friendship with Ms. Reynolds. The penthouse occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Despite its expansive space and luxury finishes, it felt strangely impersonal, more like an upscale hotel suite than a home. No photos adorned the walls, no books filled the built-in shelves, no evidence that someone actually lived here rather than simply existed between business trips. Alex emerged from her home office, tablet in hand, still dressed in her work attire despite the weekend. The guest suite is ready for you. I've cleared the closets and dressers. She hesitated, watching Sophie's careful arrangement of stuffed animals. Does she need anything special for her room? Different lighting, storage for toys? The awkward formality in her tone revealed her uncertainty around children. Jack set down the box. Kids need consistency during change. We brought her nightlight, her favorite blanket, the sound machine she's used to. The rest will sort itself out. Alex nodded, making a mental note. I've scheduled a meeting with Dr. Patel tomorrow, the pediatric pulmonologist I mentioned. Her office agreed to fit Sophie in as a favor to me. Jack's jaw tightened at the reminder of their arrangement's true nature. Every benefit came with the knowledge that he couldn't have provided it himself. That was fast. Alex missed the tension in his voice, still focused on her tablet. I've also updated our cover story. We met 6 months ago when you serviced my car, kept in touch, and recently realized our connection was worth pursuing seriously. Given my father's health concerns and your daughter's need for stability, we decided to formalize our relationship quickly. Sophie looked up, catching fragments of adult conversation. Are we having a party? Mrs. Parker says people have parties when they get married. Jack and Alex exchanged quick glances. They had agreed to a small civil ceremony documented for appearances, but without fanfare, a business transaction disguised as a life event. But Sophie's question highlighted what they'd overlooked. Children expected celebrations for significant occasions. Alex surprised them both by kneeling beside Sophie, careful to maintain a respectful distance from the stuffed animal arrangement. Would you like a small party? Nothing too big, but special enough to mark the occasion. Sophie's eyes widened. Could I wear a pretty dress and maybe have a cake? The hopefulness in her eyes cracked something in Alex's carefully maintained composure. Of course, every special occasion needs a cake. Jack watched the exchange with mixed emotions. Alex was trying, he had to acknowledge that. But each step deeper into this charade increased his discomfort. They were building an elaborate fiction that would eventually collapse, potentially leaving Sophie more hurt than before. Later that evening, after Sophie had been tucked into her new bedroom with her familiar bedtime routine, Jack found Alex on the terrace staring out at the city lights. We need to talk about Sophie's expectations. She's already getting attached to the idea of us as a family. Alex turned, moonlight highlighting the fatigue in her expression. I know. I didn't anticipate how quickly children invest emotionally. She leaned against the railing. Perhaps we should establish clearer boundaries. Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. Boundaries. She's 6. She sees a nice lady who's suddenly living with her and her dad talking about parties and cakes. In her mind, we're already a family. The reality hung between them. This arrangement made sense on paper, but overlooked the most vulnerable person involved. The contract couldn't account for a child's heart. Alex's phone chimed with a message. She glanced at it, her professional mask sliding back into place. The PR team has prepared our announcement for Monday. The story will break in the business section. Respected CEO finds love with hardworking single father. Human interest angle designed to resonate with Takeshi's traditional values without seeming calculated. Jack took the phone, scanning the draft announcement with growing unease. The story painted him as some kind of blue-collar hero, devoted father, veteran, salt-of-the-earth counterbalance to Alex's corporate success. This makes me sound like a character from a Hallmark movie. Alex reclaimed her phone. That's precisely the point. The narrative needs to appeal to specific sensibilities. The devoted father who sacrificed career advancement for his child. The career woman who found unexpected love and balance. Her voice softened slightly. None of it's entirely untrue. Jack's gaze sharpened. Except the love part. That's entirely fiction. An unexpected flicker of something crossed Alex's face before she turned back to the city lights. Yes, of course. Monday morning brought the media announcement and immediate ripples through Chicago's business community. Jack drove Sophie to school in his pickup truck, one normal routine preserved amid the upheaval, while Alex headed to Reynolds Technologies to face the inevitable questions. Victoria was waiting in Alex's office tablet, displaying the announcement alongside early reactions. Congratulations are apparently in order. The board is cautiously optimistic, Malcolm is suspiciously quiet, and Takeshi's representatives have requested dinner with you and your new husband next week. Alex set down her briefcase. That was fast. Victoria studied her friend's face. This is really happening, isn't it? You're actually marrying the mechanic. Alex bristled slightly. His name is Jack, and yes, Friday at the courthouse. Small ceremony, family only. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Family meaning? Alex busied herself with her morning emails. My father, Jack's daughter, you if you're available. Victoria set aside her tablet. Alex, I've known you since business school. In 15 years, I've never seen you date anyone for more than 3 months. Now you're suddenly marrying a man you met. When exactly? The challenge in her friend's voice was impossible to ignore. Alex had anticipated skepticism, but hadn't prepared for the direct confrontation from the one person who knew her best. Alex met Victoria's gaze directly. It's not conventional, but neither am I. Jack is different, stable, grounded in ways that make sense to me right now. Victoria's expression softened. And does he understand what he's getting into? The scrutiny, the expectations. Your world isn't exactly forgiving to outsiders. The question struck uncomfortably close to concerns Alex had been suppressing. Jack had spent his adult life in environments where directness and competence were valued above social nuance. Reynolds Technologies operated in subtler currencies, influence appearance, strategic relationships. He would be entering a battlefield without recognizing the weapons. Later that week, Alex arranged for Jack to meet with the company's image consultant, a necessary preparation for his debut in her world. The stylist arrived at the penthouse with racks of clothing, a barber, and opinions about everything from Jack's haircut to his posture. Jack endured the first hour with military stoicism, allowing the stylist to replace his functional wardrobe with custom suits and designer casual wear. But when the consultant began critiquing his manner of speech, suggesting he minimize references to his military background and adopt more sophisticated conversation topics, Jack's patience evaporated. Alex returned from work to find Jack alone on the terrace, still wearing the tailored shirt and slacks from his styling session, but with his original work boots defiantly back on his feet. Your fashion guru left in a hurry. Alex set down her laptop bag. What happened? Jack turned from the railing, moonlight casting hard shadows across his features. He suggested I needed elocution lessons. Apparently, my working-class Chicago accent might embarrass you at board functions. Alex winced. Bradley can be overzealous. His job is to anticipate potential issues. Jack's laugh held no humor. The potential issue is that I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I come from. I agreed to wear the monkey suits when necessary. I didn't agree to become someone else entirely. The fundamental tension of their arrangement crystallized in that moment, the unbridgeable gap between their worlds that no contract could address. Jack would never truly belong in her corporate sphere, and Alex had no real place in his practical, straightforward existence. Jack moved toward the door, then paused. Your father called. He wants to meet me before the ceremony tomorrow. Suggested breakfast at his place in Lake Forest. Alex's careful composure faltered. He didn't mention that to me. Jack shrugged. Fathers tend to get protective when their daughters make life-changing decisions, even fake ones. The next morning found Jack driving his freshly washed pickup along Lake Michigan's North Shore, following directions to Richard Reynolds' estate. The property sprawled across manicured acres, the main house an elegant mansion that would have intimidated Jack had he not seen far worse things in his military days. Richard Reynolds received him in a sunroom overlooking the lake. At 68, he remained an imposing figure despite recent health problems. The resemblance to Alex was striking, the same analytical eyes, the same subtle tension around the mouth when thinking. Richard gestured to the chair opposite his. So you're the man who supposedly captured my daughter's heart in record time. Naval engineering, small business owner, single father. Impressive resume. The directness was refreshing after weeks of corporate doublespeak. Jack met the older man's gaze without flinching. I'm guessing you didn't invite me here to exchange pleasantries, Mr. Reynolds. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, evaluating. No, I invited you to understand what kind of man agrees to this arrangement with my daughter. Jack stiffened. You know, Richard nodded. Alex doesn't make impulsive, romantic decisions. Never has. When she announced she was marrying a mechanic she barely knew, it took about 5 minutes to deduce what was actually happening. He leaned forward. What's your price, Mr. Miller? What does it cost to rent a husband these days? The deliberate crudeness of the question hit its mark. Jack stood, hands clenched. I think we're done here. Richard remained seated, his expression unchanged. Sit down. If you storm out now, you'll only confirm my suspicions. Jack hesitated, then slowly retook his seat. Your daughter proposed a business arrangement that solves problems for both of us. There's nothing sordid about it. Richard studied him for a long moment. My daughter is brilliant at business, but remarkably naive about people. She believes she can compartmentalize everything, separate emotion from transaction, personal from professional. He gestured toward the window. 35 years I've lived in this house. Built a company, raised a daughter, buried a wife. Do you know what I've learned? Life doesn't respect the boundaries we try to impose on it, especially when children are involved. Jack thought of Sophie already adapting to their new living arrangement, already forming attachments that would eventually need severing. I'm aware of the risks. Richard's expression softened slightly. Are you? Because from where I sit, you're risking your daughter's emotional well-being and your own integrity for financial security. And Alex is risking her reputation and her heart on a temporary solution to a permanent problem. The assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Jack had justified the arrangement as necessary for Sophie's medical care, but he'd avoided examining the deeper implications, what it taught her about relationships, about solving problems, about authenticity. Richard sighed, suddenly looking older. I won't interfere. Alex makes her own decisions, always has. But understand this, if you hurt my daughter, contract or no contract, there will be consequences. Jack met the older man's gaze. I have no intention of hurting anyone. Richard's smile held no warmth. No one ever does. And yet, the civil ceremony at the courthouse was brief and efficient, exactly the business transaction it represented. Sophie wore a new blue dress and carried a small bouquet of daisies, beaming as she performed her role as flower girl. Victoria stood beside Alex, her expression carefully neutral. Richard watched from the second row, his assessment of Jack continuing silently. Afterward, they gathered at a small reception at the penthouse, catered finger food champagne for the adults, sparkling cider for Sophie. The little group maintained the pretense, raising glasses to the happy couple, carefully avoiding mentions of contracts or arrangements. As the afternoon progressed, Jack found Alex alone on the terrace, watching Sophie show Victoria her collection of rocks and minerals. Your father thinks we're making a terrible mistake. Alex didn't turn. He expressed similar sentiments to me, but he's also a pragmatist. He understands what's at stake. Jack leaned against the railing beside her. Is it worth it? All this deception just to satisfy some outdated cultural expectation? Alex finally faced him. It's not just about Takeshi's investment. It's about maintaining control of my company. My father built Reynolds Technologies from nothing. I won't be the one who loses it because of corporate politics and gender bias. Something fierce flashed in her eyes. Sometimes you have to play their game to change the rules. The conviction in her voice revealed more than she perhaps intended, the pressure she carried as Richard Reynolds' daughter and successor, the constant need to prove herself in ways male CEOs never had to consider. For the first time, Jack saw beyond the polished corporate facade to the woman determined to protect her legacy at any cost. The following week brought their first public appearance as a married couple, a charity gala for Chicago Children's Hospital where Reynolds Technologies was a major donor. Jack wore one of his new suits, feeling like an actor in a costume rather than himself. Sophie stayed with Mrs. Parker for the evening, her absence leaving Jack even more adrift in Alex's world. The ballroom of the historic Palmer House Hotel gleamed with old Chicago money and new tech wealth. Jack recognized faces from television and business magazines, CEOs, politicians, celebrities. Alex moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing Jack to a blur of names and titles he couldn't possibly remember. Malcolm Hayes appeared before them with poisonous timing, champagne flute in hand, and skepticism in his smile. The happy couple, how serendipitous that you found each other just when the board was expressing concerns. Alex's grip on Jack's arm tightened imperceptibly. Malcolm, you remember my husband, Jack Miller. Malcolm extended his hand. Of course, the military man turned mechanic. Quite the career trajectory. Jack accepted the handshake, meeting the challenge in Malcolm's eyes. Not everyone measures success by corner offices and stock options. Malcolm's smile hardened. No, indeed. Some measure it in more opportunistic ways. He turned to Alex. The Takeshi delegation arrives tomorrow. They're quite eager to meet your new husband, particularly curious about this whirlwind romance. After Malcolm moved on, Jack leaned closer to Alex. He knows. Alex sipped her champagne. Malcolm suspects, but he can't prove anything. As long as we present a united front, his doubts remain just that, doubts. The evening progressed with increasing discomfort for Jack. The conversations around him centered on stock performances, vacation properties, private schools, the casual language of privilege that emphasized how completely he didn't belong. When he mentioned Sophie's interest in science, several guests automatically assumed she attended one of Chicago's elite private academies, their expressions shifting to poorly concealed surprise when he clarified she went to public school. By midnight, Jack had reached his limit. He found Alex deep in conversation with potential investors and quietly informed her he was leaving. The flash of annoyance in her eyes was quickly masked, but not before he caught it. The drive back to the penthouse gave Jack time to process the evening. He had expected differences between their worlds, but hadn't anticipated the subtle disdain, the automatic assumptions, the way Alex's colleagues viewed him as either a curiosity or an inconvenience. The Jack Miller they wanted to see, the sanitized, palatable version presented in the press release, was a fiction he couldn't maintain indefinitely. He arrived home to find Mrs. Parker asleep on the couch and Sophie peaceful in her bedroom. After settling Mrs. Parker in the guest room for the night, Jack sat in the darkened living room, surrounded by Alex's minimalist furniture and expensive art, feeling like an intruder in the life he'd agreed to inhabit. The Takeshi delegation arrived the next day, Mr. Takeshi himself accompanied by 3 executives and a cultural attaché. Reynolds Technologies pulled out all stops, hosting them in the company's executive dining room, with traditional Japanese cuisine prepared by a renowned chef. Jack sat beside Alex at the head table, acutely aware of the scrutiny directed his way. Mr. Takeshi addressed him directly during the second course. "Mr. Miller, your military background is most impressive. The discipline of military service builds strong character, I believe." Jack nodded, grateful for a topic he could discuss with authority. "The Navy taught me about systems, thinking how each component affects the whole. It's been invaluable in my civilian work, too." Mr. Takeshi seemed pleased with this response. "And now you have married a most accomplished woman. In Japan, we might find such a match unusual, the CEO and the mechanic." The directness of the comment created a moment of tension around the table. Jack felt Alex stiffen beside him, but maintained his composure. "In America, we believe character matters more than titles. Alex built her success through intelligence and determination, qualities I deeply respect." He glanced at her with practiced affection. "I may repair engines, but I recognize exceptional engineering when I see it." The response earned approving nods from the Japanese delegation. Alex smoothly steered the conversation back to business, but not before squeezing Jack's hand in genuine gratitude beneath the table. The luncheon concluded with promises of continued discussions. As the delegation departed, Victoria approached with barely contained excitement. "They're impressed." Mr. Takeshi specifically mentioned appreciating the balance of perspectives in Alex's life now. Alex maintained her professional demeanor until they were alone in her office. Only then did she allow herself a moment of triumph, tension releasing from her shoulders. "It's working. They're responding exactly as we anticipated." Jack leaned against her office doorframe, conflicted by their success. "So I passed inspection." The mechanic didn't embarrass the CEO. Alex looked up, catching something in his tone. "You did more than pass. You were perfect, authentic, without being defensive, confident, without overcompensating." She hesitated. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy for you." The simple acknowledgement of his discomfort surprised him. Throughout their arrangement, Alex had maintained focused efficiency, rarely acknowledging the emotional complexities beneath their transaction. That evening, they received an unexpected invitation. Mr. Takeshi requested their presence for a private dinner at his hotel suite the following night. Not a business meeting, the message specified, a personal gathering to better understand American family values. Alex paced the penthouse living room, recalibrating their strategy. "This is unusual, but potentially very positive. Takeshi is moving from professional assessment to personal connection." Jack watched Sophie playing with building blocks nearby, constructing an elaborate structure with focused determination. "What exactly does a personal gathering entail?" Alex checked her tablet calendar. "I'll reschedule tomorrow's meetings. We should arrive together, present the united front. They'll likely ask more personal questions: how we met, what attracted us to each other. We need to align our stories completely." Jack glanced at Sophie again, lowering his voice. "You realize what this means. They're not just evaluating you anymore. They're evaluating us as a couple, as a family." The observation landed heavily between them. Their arrangement had focused primarily on presenting Jack as Alex's stable, respectable husband. They hadn't prepared for scrutiny of their relationship itself, the chemistry, the connection, the intangible elements no contract could specify. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, they sat at the kitchen counter with notebooks, crafting their love story, like screenwriters developing a plot. Details matter, Alex insisted. We need specific moments, shared experiences, the progression from business to personal. Jack rubbed his tired eyes. This is exhausting. Real relationships don't develop with spreadsheets and timelines. Alex looked up from her notes. How did it happen with Sarah, your real relationship? The question caught him off guard. In the weeks of planning and negotiating, Alex had never asked about his late wife beyond the basic facts necessary for their arrangement. Jack set down his pen, memories surfacing that he usually kept carefully contained. We grew up in the same neighborhood. Her family moved in when she was 14. I was 16 working at my uncle's garage after school. She used to walk past every day. He smiled faintly. I'd make sure I was always working on something impressive when she came by. One day her bike chain broke right in front of the garage. I fixed it, tried to act like it was no big deal. She saw right through me. Alex listened with unexpected interest. And then, Jack shrugged. High school, then I enlisted. We wrote letters while I was overseas. When I came back on leave, I asked her to marry me. Simple, really. Alex's expression turned reflective. Not simple at all. That's a real connection developed over years. She looked down at their constructed timeline. This must seem incredibly artificial to you. The acknowledgement of their arrangement's fundamental falseness hung between them. Jack studied her, realizing she rarely revealed vulnerability or doubt. What about you? No serious relationships before this creative partnership of ours? Alex returned to her notes. Nothing worth mentioning. Jack recognized the deflection, but decided not to push. We should include Sophie in our story more prominently. It would be natural for her to be a significant factor in our relationship. Alex nodded, grateful for the redirection. Of course, the devoted father is central to your appeal in this narrative. The phrasing, reducing his relationship with Sophie to a marketable quality, stung more than Jack expected. She's not a character trait, Alex. She's my daughter. Alex looked up, recognizing her misstep. I didn't mean... Jack stood, gathering his notes. It's late. We should continue this tomorrow. As he headed toward his bedroom, Alex called after him. Jack, I'm sorry. That came out wrong. He paused, but didn't turn around. No, it came out exactly right. That's the problem. The private dinner with Takeshi proved more challenging than anticipated. Held in the presidential suite of the Peninsula Hotel, the intimate gathering included only Mr. Takeshi, his wife, and his cultural attaché. The setting, low tables, traditional seating arrangements, multiple small courses created an atmosphere of closeness that magnified every interaction between Jack and Alex. Mrs. Takeshi, a petite woman with observant eyes, directed most of her attention to their relationship. Tell me, when did you first realize your feelings for Alexandra were more than professional? Jack and Alex exchanged glances, silently determining who would answer. Jack took the lead, drawing from their prepared narrative, but infusing it with genuine emotion. It wasn't one moment, but many small ones. Watching her with Sophie, patient, attentive, despite her demanding schedule. Seeing beyond the CEO to the person who stops to help an elderly neighbor with groceries. He smiled at Alex. Strength usually gets recognized. Kindness often goes unnoticed. I noticed both. Alex felt an unexpected warmth at his words. The answer was technically fiction, but delivered with such sincerity that even she momentarily forgot its manufactured nature. Mrs. Takeshi nodded approvingly. And you, Alexandra, what drew you to Jack? Alex hesitated, their scripted answers suddenly feeling insufficient. She looked at Jack, really looked at him, and found herself speaking from a place of unexpected truth. His integrity. In my world, people constantly calculate advantage, position themselves for gain. Jack simply does what's right, regardless of benefit. He has a clarity I've always lacked. She smiled slightly. And he makes excellent coffee. The small, personal detail, unscripted but accurate, landed perfectly. Mrs. Takeshi laughed softly, clearly, charmed by the glimpse of domesticity. Mr. Takeshi raised his sake cup. To new partnerships, business and personal, both require trust, respect, and mutual benefit. The evening progressed with increasing warmth. Jack found himself genuinely enjoying the cultural exchange, particularly when the conversation turned to Japanese automotive engineering. Alex watched with growing respect as he held his own in technical discussions with Mr. Takeshi, whose hobby collection of vintage cars created unexpected common ground. As they walked back into their car afterward, Alex's professional composure gave way to genuine excitement. They loved you. Did you see Mrs. Takeshi's reaction when you mentioned teaching Sophie basic Japanese phrases? That personal connection was exactly what we needed. Jack opened her car door, the gentleman role becoming habitual despite its performative origins. Does this mean the investment is secure? Alex settled into the passenger seat. Nothing's certain until contracts are signed, but this was a significant step forward. Takeshi values personal relationships in business. We've established that foundation. The drive home was companionably quiet. Jack found himself reflecting on the evening, how the line between performance and reality had blurred during certain moments. Some of what he'd said about Alex wasn't entirely fabricated. She did show unexpected kindness in small ways he'd observed. She was patient with Sophie, and there was something compelling about her determination, her absolute clarity of purpose. Alex's thoughts followed similar paths. Jack's steady presence throughout the evening had been more than just a performance. He'd been genuinely engaging, thoughtful, occasionally even charming. The persona he presented wasn't manufactured for Takeshi's benefit. It was simply Jack navigating an unfamiliar situation with the same straightforward integrity he brought to everything. The following weeks established new patterns in their shared life. Jack continued running his garage during the day while Sophie attended school. Alex worked her usual long hours at Reynolds Technologies, but now made efforts to return home for dinner 3 nights a week, a concession to their family narrative that became surprisingly meaningful to Sophie. One evening, Jack returned from the garage to find Alex and Sophie at the kitchen counter, surrounded by baking ingredients and dusted with flour. Sophie's face lit up when she saw him. "We're making cookies. Alex is teaching me fractions using measuring cups." The domestic scene was so unexpected that Jack momentarily forgot to respond. Alex looked up, a smudge of flour on her cheek, something approaching embarrassment in her expression. "Sophie mentioned wanting to bake, and I remembered my mother teaching me this way. It's a practical application of mathematical concepts." The justification was so characteristically Alex finding educational value in a simple activity that Jack had to smile. "Smells great. Need any help?" Sophie shook her head emphatically. "It's girls' baking time. You can taste test when we're done." The casual designation, "girls' baking time," hung in the air between them. Sophie had unconsciously created a category that placed Alex in a maternal role, a development neither adult had anticipated or prepared for. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Jack found Alex working on her laptop at the dining table. "Thank you for spending time with her today. She clearly enjoyed it." Alex closed her computer. "She's a remarkable child. Her mathematical intuition is advanced for her age." Jack sat across from her. "We need to talk about boundaries. Sophie's getting attached." Alex nodded, her expression serious. "I've noticed the girls' baking time comment was concerning." Jack leaned forward. "This is exactly what my father-in-law warned about. Children don't compartmentalize like adults. To Sophie, you're becoming a permanent fixture in her life, not a temporary business arrangement." Alex met his gaze directly. "What do you suggest? Should I distance myself? Be less engaged when I'm here?" The questions held no defensiveness, only genuine concern. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Pulling back now might hurt her too. We've created an impossible situation." Alex was silent for a moment. "Perhaps we need to focus on quality rather than classification. I can spend time with Sophie without encouraging specific role associations." The analytical approach was so typically Alex that Jack almost smiled despite the seriousness of the conversation. "Life isn't a business problem, Alex. Emotions don't follow strategic plans." Before she could respond, his phone rang. Mrs. Parker's name flashed on the screen. Jack answered immediately, his expression shifting to concern. "Tonight, are you sure?" He listened for a moment longer. "No, don't worry about it. We'll figure something out. Get some rest." He ended the call, turning back to Alex. "Mrs. Parker was supposed to watch Sophie this weekend while I handle a major repair job at the garage. Her sister's been hospitalized. She needs to fly to Florida first thing tomorrow." Alex processed this information with her usual efficiency. "I can watch Sophie." Jack stared at her. "You have the Takeshi contract review this weekend. You've been preparing for weeks." Alex hesitated only briefly. "I can reschedule the preparatory sessions. The actual negotiation isn't until next Wednesday." Jack studied her with growing confusion. "Why would you do that?" Something unreadable crossed Alex's expression. "Because Sophie needs supervision, you need to complete your work, and I'm available." The simple solution made logical sense, yet Jack found himself searching for ulterior motives. In the corporate world, Alex inhabited every action served strategic purposes. Personal sacrifices were calculated investments. Yet her offer seemed genuinely uncomplicated. That weekend reshaped something fundamental in their arrangement. Alex canceled her meetings without explanation to subordinates who knew better than to question her. Jack worked extended hours at the garage restoring a vintage Corvette for a client willing to pay premium rates for expedited service. Meanwhile, Alex and Sophie explored the city together, the Shed Aquarium, the Field Museum, a children's science exhibition at the university. Alex approached their outings with the same focused attention she brought to business negotiations, researching exhibits in advance, and preparing age-appropriate explanations for Sophie's inevitable questions. By Sunday evening, when Jack returned exhausted but triumphant from the garage, he found them on the living room floor surrounded by craft supplies creating a diorama of marine ecosystems based on their aquarium visit. Sophie looked up with shining eyes. Dad, Alex knows everything about whales. Did you know blue whales have hearts the size of small cars, almost like the ones you fix? The genuine excitement in his daughter's voice was matched only by the unfamiliar softness in Alex's expression as she helped Sophie attach a paper whale to their ocean scene. Something had shifted between them, a connection formed without strategic planning or contractual obligation. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Jack brought Alex a glass of wine on the terrace. Thank you for today. And yesterday, she had an amazing weekend. Alex accepted the glass, her usual composure slightly relaxed after 2 days away from corporate demands. I enjoyed it too. Sophie's curiosity is refreshing. In my world, people hide questions to avoid appearing uninformed. She just wants to understand everything. Jack leaned against the railing beside her. Sarah was like that, never embarrassed to ask why, even as an adult. I think that's why she became such a good teacher. The mention of his late wife didn't bring the usual sharp edge of grief. Instead, Jack found himself able to share the memory with surprising ease. Sophie has her smile, exactly the same expression when she's excited about something. Alex listened with quiet attention. You must miss her terribly. Jack looked out at the city lights. Every day, but differently now. The first year was just survival, getting through each day, making sure Sophie was okay. He took a breath. Now it's more about honoring her memory by raising Sophie well, making sure she knows who her mother was. Alex hesitated before asking, does our arrangement complicate that Sophie's understanding of family? The question cut to the heart of concerns Jack had been avoiding. I don't know. I worry about that. What message am I sending her about marriage, about relationships, that they're transactions, business deals? Alex set down her wine glass. You're teaching her about adaptation, about finding solutions to difficult problems, about cooperation. She turned to face him directly. But I understand your concern. She deserves authenticity. The acknowledgement hung between them as they stood side by side watching the city below. For the first time since beginning their arrangement, Jack felt they were truly seeing the same problem from the same perspective, not as CEO and mechanic, not as business partners, but as two people concerned for a child caught in their complicated adult decisions. The moment shattered when Alex's phone chimed with an urgent message. Malcolm had called an emergency strategy session for the Takeshi negotiations. She was expected at the office immediately despite the late hour, the corporate world reclaiming its own. As Alex gathered her materials and changed into business attire, Jack watched the transformation with new awareness. The woman who had spent the weekend making paper whales and explaining ocean currents to Sophie disappeared behind the polished CEO persona. Yet having glimpsed beneath that surface, Jack found himself wondering which version was the performance and which was real. The question lingered as he heard the elevator doors close behind her, leaving him alone in their shared space that was neither fully hers nor his, a liminal territory as undefined as their relationship itself. Morning light streamed through the penthouse windows as Jack emerged from his bedroom, finding Sophie already seated at the kitchen counter with a bowl of cereal. 3 months had passed since they'd moved in with Alex, 90 days of carefully navigating their arrangement while constructing the appearance of a blended family. 3 months of corporate events, shared meals, and a gradual unplanned blurring of boundaries. The Takeshi investment had been secured 2 weeks earlier. The contract signing made front-page business news with photos of Alex and Jack standing alongside Mr. Takeshi's champagne glasses raised in celebration. The board had subsequently renewed their confidence in Alex's leadership, Malcolm's opposition, effectively neutralized by the Japanese partnership's success. By every measurable objective, their arrangement was working perfectly. Yet Jack found himself increasingly unsettled by the undefined territory they now occupied, neither fully performing roles nor simply being themselves. Sophie looked up from her breakfast milk dribbling down her chin. Is Alex gone already? She promised to help me practice my science presentation. Jack handed her a napkin. She had an early meeting, some problem with the San Francisco office. The disappointment on Sophie's face twisted something in Jack's chest. Alex had been working longer hours since securing the Takeshi deal, the successful partnership creating new demands on her time. Their family dinners had dwindled from 3 nights a week to barely one, with Alex often returning after Sophie was asleep. The front door opened unexpectedly, and Alex walked in, still dressed in yesterday's suit, but carrying a bakery bag that filled the apartment with the scent of fresh pastries. Sorry I'm late. Board meeting ran until midnight, then early calls with Singapore. She set down her briefcase and placed the bakery bag on the counter. Almond croissants, brain food for science presentations. Sophie's entire face brightened. You remembered. Alex's professional mask softened as she pulled up a stool beside Sophie. Of course. Tell me about your volcano model again. The chemical reaction creates the eruption effect. Jack watched them from the kitchen, struck by the contradiction Alex presented. The ruthless CEO who terrorized boardrooms brought almond croissants and discussed elementary school science with complete seriousness. The woman who scheduled her life in 15-minute increments had somehow carved out space this morning specifically for Sophie. These moments of genuine connection had been occurring with increasing frequency, complicating what should have been a straightforward business arrangement. Jack had observed Alex's gradual transformation from awkward around Sophie to genuinely engaged, from performing stepmother to something more authentic that defied simple classification. After helping Sophie gather her school materials, Jack found Alex in the master bathroom, removing yesterday's makeup with practiced efficiency. You didn't have to come back. I know you're swamped with the expansion planning. Alex met his eyes in the mirror. Sophie's presentation is important. The Singapore team can wait 30 minutes. She hesitated, something uncertain crossing her expression. Unless you'd prefer I maintain more distance. We discussed boundaries before, and I've been thinking perhaps I've overstepped. The question caught Jack off guard. No, it's fine. Sophie appreciates your help. She talks about you constantly at school now. Alex turned to face him directly. That's actually what concerns me. Jack, her teacher, called me yesterday. Apparently, Sophie told her entire class that she has 2 parents again during family discussion time. The information hit like a physical blow. Jack leaned against the door frame, processing the implications. I'll talk to her, make sure she understands our situation. Alex's normally confident demeanor faltered. What exactly is our situation now, Jack? The contract specified performance requirements for public appearances and corporate events. It didn't address, she gestured vaguely between them, whatever this has become. The question stripped away pretense, forcing acknowledgement of the shifting ground beneath their arrangement. What had begun as clearly defined roles with explicit parameters had evolved into something neither had anticipated: a functioning household with genuine attachments forming despite their best efforts to maintain emotional distance. Before Jack could respond, his phone rang, the garage calling about an urgent client issue. The interruption provided a convenient escape from a conversation neither was fully prepared to have. That evening, Jack took Sophie for pizza at their old neighborhood restaurant, a familiar ritual from before their life changed. Seated in their usual booth, Sophie happily chattering about her successful science presentation, Jack searched for an opening to address her comments at school. Kiddo, Mrs. Johnson mentioned you talked about having 2 parents during class yesterday. Sophie nodded, pizza sauce smudging her cheek. Jenny was bragging about having a mom and dad and a stepmom who gives her presents. I said I have a dad who fixes cars and Alex who knows everything about science and business. That's better than Jenny's stepmom who just buys her stuff. The innocent comparison revealed Sophie's developing attachment to Alex not as a replacement for Sarah, but as a distinct presence in her life who provided unique value. Jack struggled to find age-appropriate words to clarify their arrangement without dismissing Sophie's genuine feelings. Soph, remember how we talked about Alex and me having a special friendship, how we're helping each other out? Sophie frowned slightly. But you live together like married people, and you wear rings, and Alex helps me with homework and makes breakfast on Sundays. That's what parents do. The simple logic of a 6-year-old cut through adult complications. In Sophie's world, actions defined relationships. The people who lived together, cared for her, and wore wedding rings were by definition her parents. The legal and financial architecture supporting their arrangement meant nothing to her developing understanding of family. Jack took a deep breath. It's complicated, sweetheart. Alex and I care about you very much, but adult relationships are different from what they might seem. Sophie studied him with Sarah's thoughtful eyes. Do you like Alex? The straightforward question deserved an honest answer. Yes, I like her. She's smart and kind in her own way. Sophie seemed satisfied with this confirmation. She likes you too. I can tell because she smiles different when you come home, not like her work smile. The observation lodged in Jack's mind persistent through their drive home and Sophie's bedtime routine. Children often perceived emotional currents adults tried to conceal their assessment uncluttered by pretense or expectation. Had Sophie identified something real or was she simply interpreting their performances as genuine? Alex returned home after Sophie was asleep, bringing the sharp scent of winter air with her as she stepped off the elevator. Jack sat in the dimly lit living room, nursing a beer and sorting through maintenance invoices for the garage. Her carefully maintained composure showed signs of fraying, subtle indicators Jack had learned to recognize over months of cohabitation. The slightly loosened collar, one more button undone than her usual professional standard. The controlled deliberateness of her movements compensating for her fatigue. Long day. Alex set down her briefcase. 18 hours of persuading people who earn seven-figure salaries to do what they're paid to do. She slipped off her heels with a barely audible sigh of relief. How was Sophie's presentation? Perfect. Complete with red food coloring erupting from papier-mâché. Her teacher gave her a gold star. A genuine smile briefly displaced Alex's exhaustion. I'm not surprised. She practiced that baking soda measurement 10 times. Alex disappeared into her bedroom and returning minutes later in silk pajamas and a cashmere robe, her version of casual comfort still more elegant than most people's formal wear. She poured herself a small glass of whiskey and joined Jack on the couch, curling her legs beneath her in a rare posture of relaxation. I talked with Sophie about her comments at school. Alex's attention sharpened. What did she say? Jack set aside his paperwork. She's 6. In her mind, people who live together and take care of her are her parents. The nuances of our arrangement aren't exactly comprehensible to a first grader. Alex sipped her whiskey, considering. Children categorize experiences based on observable patterns. Our behavior matches her concept of family, so she's classified us accordingly. The analytical framing was characteristic, Alex processing emotional complexity through rational frameworks. Should we modify our behavior to create more distinction? Jack ran a hand through his hair. That's the problem. Any significant change now would confuse and hurt her. We've created an impossible situation. Alex was quiet for a moment. Our contract has 8 months remaining. Then we proceed with the amicable separation as planned. Sophie is resilient, children adapt. The clinical assessment provoked unexpected anger in Jack. She's not a business problem to solve, Alex. She's already lost her mother. Now she's forming an attachment to you that has an expiration date we've predetermined. Alex set down her glass. What alternative do you suggest? Continue indefinitely renegotiate terms. Her voice held genuine question rather than challenge. The conversation veered into territory neither had anticipated when drafting their arrangement. What had seemed straightforward on paper, a year-long performance with clear beginning and end, had developed complications no contract could address. I don't know. I just know that Sophie's happiness matters more than any business deal. Alex studied him with uncharacteristic vulnerability. And what about your happiness? Is this arrangement acceptable to you beyond its financial benefits? The question contained layers Jack wasn't prepared to examine. Not tonight, not with Alex looking at him with those perceptive eyes that missed nothing. Not with the household they'd created, feeling suddenly fragile around them. We should get some sleep. Early day tomorrow. The deliberate evasion hung between them as Jack gathered his paperwork and retreated to his bedroom, leaving Alex alone with her whiskey and unanswered questions. Morning brought a return to established routines. Alex departing before dawn for early meetings, Jack making Sophie's breakfast and packing her lunch before driving her to school. The penthouse felt different somehow, their conversation having disturbed the careful equilibrium they'd maintained for months. Jack arrived at Miller Auto to find an unexpected visitor waiting. Malcolm Hayes leaned against his luxury sedan designer overcoat, protecting him from the December chill. The COO's presence at the garage could signal nothing positive. Mr. Miller, just the man I wanted to see. Jack continued unlocking the garage door, refusing to show surprise or concern. What can I do for you, Malcolm? Malcolm followed him inside, surveying the garage with poorly disguised disdain. Quaint operation you have here, very authentic. Jack flipped on the lights, beginning his morning routine of checking overnight messages and preparing work orders. If you're looking for service, I'm booked through next week. Malcolm smiled without warmth. I'm not here about car troubles. I'm here about your arrangement with Alexandra. The directness of the statement confirmed Jack's suspicion Malcolm had been investigating their marriage despite the Takeshi deal's success. Jack maintained his focus on the work orders, refusing to provide the reaction Malcolm sought. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Malcolm produced a folder from his coat pocket. Your military record indicates you served with distinction, honorable discharge, excellent performance reviews. A man of integrity, by all accounts. He opened the folder, which makes your current situation all the more puzzling. The timing of your whirlwind romance coinciding precisely with the board's ultimatum to Alexandra. The convenient solution you provided to her professional dilemma. The substantial improvements in your financial circumstances immediately following your marriage. Jack finally looked up, meeting Malcolm's calculating gaze. What exactly are you implying? Malcolm closed the folder with theatrical precision. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Facts which, when presented to the board and to Takeshi Corp., will raise significant concerns about Alexandra's judgment and honesty. Perhaps even legal questions about corporate governance. The threat was explicit. Malcolm had evidence, or believed he did, of their arrangement's true nature. Jack weighed his response carefully, aware that any misstep could jeopardize not only the contract but Alex's professional standing. Sounds like you've spent considerable company time investigating your CEO's personal life. I wonder how the board would view that use of resources. Malcolm's smile tightened. The board is concerned with maintaining Reynolds Technologies' reputation and integrity. Alexandra's deception and your participation in it threatens both. Jack stepped closer, his military bearing resurfacing instinctively. I love my wife. Our relationship is none of your business. Now, unless you need an oil change, I suggest you leave. I have paying customers to attend to. The confrontation ended with Malcolm's departure, but Jack knew this was merely the opening move in a dangerous game. Malcolm wouldn't make direct accusations without confidence in his position. The threat to Alex's career was real and immediate. Jack waited until the garage's morning rush subsided before calling Alex, reaching her voicemail 3 times before sending a text. Need to talk urgently. Malcolm came to the garage. Her response came an hour later. In meetings all day. Board dinner tonight. Talk tomorrow. The casual dismissal of what Jack considered an emergency highlighted the fundamental disconnect in their priorities. To Alex, corporate machinations were routine challenges to be managed strategically. To Jack, Malcolm's threat represented a direct attack on their carefully constructed life, one that could hurt Sophie in the fallout. That evening, Jack helped Sophie with homework at the kitchen counter, his attention divided between fraction problems and the clock marking Alex's continued absence. When Sophie finally asked the question he'd been dreading, his prepared explanations evaporated. Is Alex mad at us? She hasn't been home for dinner all week. Jack set down the pencil. No, sweetheart. She's just very busy with work right now. Big projects that need her attention. Sophie's perceptive gaze held doubt. Jenny's stepmom got too busy for her dad, and now Jenny only sees her on holidays. The comparison revealed Sophie's underlying anxiety. She had categorized Alex as a parental figure, and now feared losing that connection just as Jenny had experienced. Jack struggled to provide reassurance without making promises he couldn't keep. Alex has a different kind of job than most people. Sometimes it needs her for long hours. But she still cares about us. The front door opened, interrupting their conversation. Alex entered, still dressed for her board dinner in an elegant black dress and heels, her expression shifting from professional detachment to genuine warmth when she saw Sophie. Am I in time to help with math? Fractions are my favorite. Sophie's entire demeanor brightened. We're doing pizza problems. Like if a pizza has 8 slices and you eat 3, what fraction is left? Alex set down her briefcase and joined them at the counter, slipping naturally into their homework routine despite her formal attire. Jack observed the interaction with conflicted emotions: relief at Sophie's happiness, concern about Malcolm's threat, and growing confusion about his own feelings toward the woman who had become an integral part of their daily life. After Sophie went to bed, Jack found Alex on the terrace despite the December cold. Did you get my message about Malcolm? Alex nodded, her breath visible in the winter air. Yes, I assumed he'd make a move eventually. The Takeshi's success diminished his influence with the board. He needs new leverage. The calm analysis frustrated Jack. He came to the garage, Alex. He all but said he has proof of our arrangement. This isn't just corporate politics, he's threatening everything. Alex turned to face him. What exactly did he say? Jack recounted the conversation in detail, Malcolm's implications and veiled threats. As he spoke, Alex's expression grew more focused, her mind visibly processing potential counters and defensive strategies. I think he's going to expose us to the board, maybe even to Takeshi. Alex considered this assessment. Possibly, but Malcolm rarely moves without certainty of success. He must believe he has compelling evidence, not just circumstantial timing. Jack leaned against the railing. What if he does? What happens then? The question hung between them, crystallizing the precariousness of their situation. Alex's carefully constructed professional reputation, Jack's business, secured through their arrangement, Sophie's newly stabilized life, all balanced on maintaining the fiction of their marriage. Alex's voice softened. We need to be prepared for various scenarios. If Malcolm presents credible evidence to the board, there would likely be an internal investigation. The Takeshi contract has morality clauses that could be triggered. Worst case, I could lose my position. The company valuation would suffer in the short term. The dispassionate analysis excluded the personal implications, how exposure would affect Sophie, how it might change the household they'd built, how it would impact whatever undefined relationship had developed between them. And us, what happens to us? The question contained multitudes. Alex met his gaze directly, something vulnerable breaking through her professional facade. That depends on what us means at this point. We started with a clear business arrangement. The parameters have evolved. The acknowledgement of their changing relationship hung in the cold air between them. Before Jack could respond, Alex's phone chimed with a message from Victoria. Emergency at server farm. System crash affecting Asian markets. All hands required. The corporate crisis provided another convenient interruption to a conversation veering into emotional territory neither was equipped to navigate. Alex transformed instantly from vulnerable to operational, gathering her things and calling for a car while explaining the technical emergency to Jack. He watched her leave, struck by how completely she could compartmentalize crisis manager. In one moment, mathematical homework helper, in another conflicted partner, in yet another. The woman contained multitudes, and Jack was increasingly unsure which version was most authentic. The following morning brought new complications. Sophie woke with labored breathing, her asthma triggered by the cold weather and stress. Jack administered her medication and called the specialist. Dr. Patel had recommended a benefit of their arrangement that had significantly improved Sophie's condition over the past months. The doctor could see Sophie immediately another advantage of Alex's connections and premium health insurance. Jack sent a brief update to Alex, who was still managing the technical crisis at Reynolds Technologies, then focused entirely on getting Sophie the care she needed. Hours later, with Sophie resting comfortably after treatment, Jack sat in the hospital waiting room reviewing aftercare instructions. The quiet efficiency of the private hospital struck him how different from the overcrowded emergency rooms and long waits they'd experienced before Alex entered their lives. These tangible benefits of their arrangement made the potential fallout from Malcolm's threats even more concerning. A message from Alex interrupted his thoughts. Still in crisis mode, how is Sophie? Do you need anything? The simple questions contained genuine concern rather than obligation. Jack had observed Alex's gradual transformation from awkward around Sophie to genuinely invested in her well-being. Whatever performance their marriage might be, Alex's care for Sophie had become authentic. She's stable, coming home this afternoon with new medication protocol. Alex's response came quickly. We'll try to be home early. Please update if anything changes. Jack pocketed his phone, struck by how naturally they'd fallen into co-parenting communications. In moments of crisis, the boundaries between arrangement and reality dissolved, leaving only shared concern for Sophie's well-being. That evening, Jack settled Sophie on the living room couch with her favorite movies and comfort foods. The new medication making her drowsy, but breathing more comfortably. The penthouse elevator opened around 7, revealing an exhausted Alex carrying a stuffed animal with a get-well balloon attached. She approached Sophie cautiously, presenting the gift. The gift shop didn't have many options. I hope a platypus is acceptable. Sophie's tired smile was answer enough as she reached for the unusual stuffed animal. It's perfect. They're mammals that lay eggs, super weird but cool. Alex sat carefully on the edge of the couch. The crisis at work is contained. I've delegated the remaining issues to the technical team. I thought my time would be better spent here. The simple statement represented a significant shift in priorities for a woman who had previously allowed nothing to interfere with work responsibilities. Jack watched from the kitchen as Alex gently checked Sophie's temperature with the back of her hand, adjusted her blanket, and engaged her in quiet conversation about platypus facts. The tenderness in these small actions revealed something fundamental about Alex, that her corporate persona concealed a capacity for care she rarely displayed in professional settings. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, Alex joined Jack in the kitchen, where he was preparing a simple dinner. Dr. Patel mentioned this episode was moderate, not severe. The new medication protocol should prevent future incidents. Jack nodded, focusing on chopping vegetables to avoid examining the relief in her voice too closely. She's tough. Gets that from her mother. Alex leaned against the counter. And from her father. She hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic uncertainty. I've been thinking about Malcolm's threat, about potential contingencies. Jack set down the knife. Before we discuss Malcolm, I need to know something. All this helping with homework, rushing home when Sophie's sick, bringing platypus stuffed animals, is it part of the performance? Or is it real? The directness of this question caught Alex off guard. In their months together, they had carefully avoided examining the blurred lines between contract and genuine connection, between performance and authentic relationship. Alex met his gaze with rare vulnerability. It started as performance. I won't pretend otherwise. But Sophie, she glanced toward the sleeping child on the couch. She's extraordinary, Jack. Her resilience, her curiosity, her capacity for joy, despite everything she's lost. Being part of her life has become important to me. The admission hung in the air between them, shifting the foundation of their arrangement. Jack processed this new information, recalibrating his understanding of the woman before him, not just the formidable CEO, but someone capable of genuine attachment and care. And us, where do we fall on the spectrum of performance versus reality? Alex looked down, her usual confidence faltering. That's more complicated. We entered this arrangement with clear boundaries and expectations. Professional, transactional. But living together, creating this household, she gestured to the domestic scene around them. Dinner preparation, childcare, shared responsibility. The lines have blurred in ways I didn't anticipate. The acknowledgement created an opening. Neither had previously allowed permission to examine what had developed between them beyond contractual obligation. Jack stepped closer, the kitchen island no longer separating them. I didn't anticipate it either, but here we are. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and complication. Before either could navigate this new territory, Alex's phone rang with Victoria's distinctive tone, the corporate world intruding yet again on personal revelation. Alex answered, her expression shifting from vulnerability back to professional focus. The technical crisis had resurged, requiring her immediate attention. Another opportunity for honest conversation lost to the demands of Reynolds Technologies. As Alex gathered her things to return to the office, Jack felt the familiar frustration of interrupted connection. These moments of potential breakthrough always seemed to dissolve before resolution, leaving them suspended in undefined relationship territory, neither fully performing roles nor simply being themselves. Days passed with increasing tension. Malcolm had gone suspiciously quiet, raising Jack's concern about what evidence he might be gathering or what strategy he might be developing. Alex worked longer hours preparing for the quarterly board meeting, where she suspected Malcolm might make his move against her. On a snowy Tuesday morning, Jack received an unexpected call from Richard Reynolds. Alex's father rarely contacted him directly, their relationship maintaining cautious distance since their confrontational first meeting. Jack, I need to see you, privately. Can you come to the house this afternoon? The request raised immediate concern. Richard's health had been stable for months, but his tone carried urgency. Jack rearranged his schedule at the garage, leaving his most experienced mechanic in charge, and drove through light snow to the Lake Forest estate. Richard received him in the library this time, surrounded by first editions and family photographs documenting generations of Reynolds' success. Despite the opulent setting, Richard himself appeared diminished since their last meeting. Thinner, his movements more measured, his commanding presence tempered by physical limitation. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't important. Jack remained standing, wariness from their previous encounter, not entirely forgotten. What's this about? Richard gestured to a chair opposite his. Malcolm Hayes came to see me yesterday. He believes your marriage to my daughter is a sham, a business arrangement designed to secure her position in the Takeshi investment. He claims to have evidence. The directness confirmed Jack's worst fears. Is that why you called me here to confirm his accusations? Richard's expression softened unexpectedly. No, I called you here to warn you and Alexandra. Malcolm is presenting his case to the board tomorrow. He's been gathering evidence for months: financial transfers, timeline inconsistencies, witness statements from household staff who've observed separate bedrooms and formal interactions when you believe yourselves unobserved. The revelation that Malcolm had been surveilling them through staff members sent a chill through Jack. What does he hope to gain? Richard sighed, age and worry evident in his features. Alexandra's position, of course. He's convinced the board that her deception represents a fundamental breach of trust with them, with shareholders, with Takeshi. If successful, he'll be named interim CEO while a search committee identifies a permanent replacement. The calculated cruelty of Malcolm's plans struck Jack as particularly vicious. Not just professional ambition, but personal vendetta against Alex. But why tell me? Why not call Alex directly? Richard's gaze sharpened. Because I'm not entirely certain what I'm warning you about. Is Malcolm right? Is your marriage truly just a business arrangement? The question demanded a decision. Continue the performance they'd maintained for months, or acknowledge the truth to the one person who might actually help them navigate the coming crisis. Jack chose honesty. It started that way. Alex proposed a mutually beneficial arrangement when the board threatened her position. 1 year of marriage to satisfy Takeshi's traditional expectations and secure her leadership. In return, financial support for Sophie's medical needs and ownership of my garage building. Richard nodded, unsurprised by the confirmation. And now, after months together, the question probed deeper territory, the evolution neither Jack nor Alex had fully articulated even to themselves. It started as business. It's become something else. Richard studied him with unexpected compassion. Something worth fighting for. The question cut through pretense, forcing Jack to confront what he'd been avoiding. His developing feelings for Alex, his attachment to the family unit they'd created, his unwillingness to return to life before she entered it. Sophie loves her, and I care about her. More than I expected to, more than makes sense given the circumstances. Richard's expression softened further. Love rarely makes sense, especially when it arrives in unexpected packages. He leaned forward, his voice strengthening. Malcolm presents his evidence to the board tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Alexandra will be blindsided. He's arranged this specifically to ambush her. You need to warn her, prepare her. Jack nodded, already calculating timing and approach. Does she know you're telling me this? Richard shook his head. Alexandra and I have a complicated relationship. She wouldn't believe my intervention comes without strings attached. He looked toward a family photograph on his desk, Alex at perhaps 16, standing beside her father on a sailboat, both smiling in rare captured happiness. I may not always show it well, but I do want her happiness, even if it comes packaged differently than I expected. The unexpected alliance with Richard Reynolds shifted Jack's understanding of both father and daughter, their complicated relationship, their shared determination, their difficulty expressing emotional truth directly. As Jack drove back toward the city, snow falling more heavily now, he processed Richard's warning and the decisions ahead. Warning Alex meant acknowledging Malcolm's threat was serious. It meant developing a strategy together, either to combat his accusations or to accept the consequences of their arrangement being exposed. Most challenging, it meant confronting what their relationship had become beyond its contractual origins. The conversation they'd been avoiding through interruptions and distractions could no longer be postponed. Jack found Alex in her home office that evening, surrounded by quarterly reports and presentation materials for the board meeting. Her focus was absolute, the CEO persona fully engaged in preparation for what she believed would be a standard financial review. I met with your father today. Alex looked up, surprise breaking through her concentration. My father, why? Jack closed the office door, ensuring Sophie wouldn't overhear their conversation from where she played in the living room. Malcolm is making his move tomorrow. He's presenting evidence to the board that our marriage is fraudulent, a business arrangement designed to secure your position and the Takeshi investment. The color drained from Alex's face as she processed this intelligence. What evidence? Financial transfers, timeline inconsistencies, household staff reporting separate bedrooms and formal interactions. Alex stood abruptly, moving to the window overlooking the city, now disappearing behind thickening snow. He's been watching us all this time. She turned back to Jack. And my father told you this, why? To warn us, to give you time to prepare. Alex's laugh held no humor. My father doesn't make charitable interventions. What does he want in return? Jack approached her carefully. Nothing. He said he wants your happiness, even if it comes differently than he expected. Alex's expression revealed deep skepticism, years of complicated father-daughter dynamics, making such simple concern difficult to accept. The board meets at 2 tomorrow. Malcolm will present after the quarterly financial review. Her mind was already shifting to strategic response, analyzing angles and options. If we counterattack, accuse him of corporate espionage and invasion of privacy, Jack interrupted her tactical planning. Before we discuss strategy, we need to decide what we're defending. Is it just your position, the contract, or is it us? The questions suspended between them, demanding clarity about what us had come to mean. Alex's professional mask faltered, vulnerability showing through cracks in her carefully maintained composure. What are we, Jack, beyond the arrangement? The directness of her question matched his own need for clarity. We started as a business transaction. Clear terms, clear timeline, clear expectations. But somewhere along the way, it became real, at least parts of it. Alex held his gaze, her characteristic analytical approach, giving way to emotional honesty. Which parts? Jack took a breath, stepping into territory neither had been willing to explore directly. The way you are with Sophie, that's real. The conversations we have late at night on the terrace, those are real. The person you are when you're not performing, CEO or wife or stepmother, she's real. Alex moved closer, her voice softening. And us, what we've become to each other. The question contained hope and fear in equal measure. Jack reached for her hand, a simple connection they rarely allowed themselves outside public performance. I know that I care about you, more than our arrangement requires, more than makes rational sense. The admission hung in the air between them, years of protective, emotional distance, making vulnerability terrifying for them both. Alex's fingers tightened around his acceptance of his honesty and offer of her own. I've spent my entire adult life keeping people at a calculated distance. Relationships were strategic assets or liabilities to be managed. Then you and Sophie, her voice caught unexpectedly, you both disrupted every system I'd created to protect myself. The confession revealed the woman beneath the CEO persona, someone who had learned to value control above connection, achievement, above attachment. Jack recognized the cost of that approach, having adopted similar protective mechanisms after Sarah's death. So what do we do now? How do we handle Malcolm tomorrow? Alex straightened, decision crystallizing in her expression. We tell the truth, not all of it, but enough. We acknowledge the arrangement began with practical considerations on both sides. But we emphasize what's developed since real connection, genuine care, a family unit that functions beyond performance. Jack considered this approach. Half-truth is still deception. The board might see it as confirmation of Malcolm's accusations. Alex shook her head. Not necessarily. Many marriages throughout history began as practical arrangements. The relevant question isn't how we started, but what we've become. She squeezed his hand. What we might still become given the chance. The suggestion contained possibility neither had previously allowed themselves to consider that their arrangement might evolve into something permanent, something chosen rather than contracted. The prospect was both exhilarating and terrifying, filled with potential and complication in equal measure. Their strategy session continued late into the night, preparing for various scenarios Malcolm might present. As snowfall increased outside, transforming Chicago's sharp edges into softer shapes, they found themselves navigating equally transformed territory in their relationship. Honesty, replacing performance, vulnerability, replacing calculation. Morning arrived with blizzard conditions, snow accumulating faster than plows could clear it. Schools announced closures, including Sophie's, creating an unexpected childcare challenge on the most critical day of their arrangement. Mrs. Parker was visiting her sister in Florida. Alex's board meeting couldn't be rescheduled. Jack needed to be present at the Reynolds Technologies offices to support whatever strategy they implemented against Malcolm's accusations. The solution came from an unexpected source. Victoria arrived at the penthouse early, having navigated treacherous roads to help prepare Alex for the board meeting. When the childcare dilemma became apparent, she offered a simple solution. I can stay with Sophie. We'll build snow forts on the terrace and make hot chocolate. Consider it my contribution to Operation Take Down Malcolm. With Sophie's care arranged, Jack and Alex made their way to Reynolds Technologies headquarters, the normally 20-minute drive taking over an hour in blizzard conditions. The weather had emptied the normally bustling downtown, giving the corporate towers an abandoned quality that matched the precariousness of their situation. In Alex's office, they made final preparations. Jack would remain outside the boardroom until needed ready to enter if Malcolm's accusations required direct response. Alex would handle the financial presentation as planned, then address Malcolm's allegations if and when he raised them. As the hour approached, Jack straightened Alex's collar in a gesture of unexpected intimacy. Whatever happens in there, we face it together, contract or no contract. Alex nodded at her CEO persona firmly in place, but her eyes conveying deeper emotion. Together. The boardroom doors closed behind her, leaving Jack in the executive waiting area, surrounded by the corporate trappings of Reynolds Technologies Awards achievements, the dynasty Alex had inherited and expanded. Everything she stood to lose if Malcolm's gambit succeeded. Minutes stretched into an hour as the financial presentation proceeded according to schedule. Then raised voices penetrated the boardroom's supposed soundproofing, Malcolm launching his attack, board members responding with surprise and concern, Alex's measured tones attempting to regain control of the narrative. The boardroom door opened suddenly and Richard Reynolds emerged looking grim but determined. "It's time, Jack. Malcolm has presented his case. Alexandra needs your support now." Jack entered the boardroom to find a scene of controlled chaos. Board members clustered in whispered consultation. Malcolm stood triumphantly beside a presentation screen displaying financial transfers and timeline evidence. Alex remained at the head of the table, her posture rigid but unbowed. When she saw Jack, something softened briefly in her expression before she addressed the room. "As I was explaining before the interruption, my relationship with Jack Miller began under unconventional circumstances. We connected initially through his automotive expertise, and our relationship developed during a period when this board had expressed concerns about my personal stability." Jack moved to stand beside her, presenting the united front they had planned. Malcolm's smile widened, sensing admission of his accusations. Malcolm gestured to the evidence displayed on screen. By Alexandra's own admission, the timing was convenient indeed. What she hasn't admitted is the financial arrangement underpinning this supposed marriage: regular payments, property transfers, insurance benefits. An elderly board member frowned. "Are you suggesting some form of impropriety?" Malcolm's expression turned sanctimonious. "I'm suggesting deception, deliberate misrepresentation to this board and to our Japanese partners. A fraudulent marriage arranged solely to secure Alexandra's position in the Takeshi investment." The accusation hung in the air, creating exactly the crisis of confidence Malcolm had intended. Board members exchanged concerned glances, corporate governance and morality clauses suddenly relevant to their deliberations. Alex squared her shoulders, preparing to implement their agreed strategy of partial truth. But before she could speak, Jack stepped forward, addressing the board directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I won't deny that practical considerations factored into the beginning of our relationship. Alexandra and I came together during challenging periods in both our lives. She needed stability to satisfy this board's concerns. I needed financial security to provide proper medical care for my daughter." The direct acknowledgement created murmurs around the table. Malcolm's expression turned triumphant, but Jack continued, his voice strengthening. "But if Malcolm has been watching us as closely as his evidence suggests, he's missed the most important development. What began as a pragmatic arrangement has become a genuine family. My daughter now has two adults who care deeply about her well-being. Alexandra and I have built a partnership based on mutual respect and growing affection." He turned to Alex, speaking now to her rather than the board. The script they had carefully prepared forgotten in favor of unplanned honesty. "When Sarah died, I thought I'd never find that kind of connection again. I didn't want it, didn't think I deserved it. I built walls to protect Sophie and myself from further loss." The personal revelations silenced the room. Alex's composed expression wavered, emotion breaking through her professional facade as Jack continued. "But you, Alexandra Reynolds, with your schedules and spreadsheets and strategic planning, somehow found your way through those walls. You became important to us. Essential. Whether this board recognizes our relationship or not, whether Takeshi maintains their investment or not, what we've built together matters. It's worth fighting for." The unscripted declaration hung in the air, more powerful than any planned strategy could have been. Jack reached for Alex's hand, a public gesture of support they had previously performed for appearances, but now filled with authentic meaning. Alex's fingers interlaced with his drawing strength from the connection as she addressed the board. When my father built this company, he taught me that success requires adaptation, that rigid thinking leads to obsolescence. What Jack and I have created may have unconventional origins, but its current value is genuine. She turned to Malcolm, her voice strengthening. You've been so focused on exposing how our relationship began that you've missed what it's become. That's the same myopic thinking that makes you unsuitable for leadership, seeing only what was instead of what could be. The counterattack landed precisely, shifting focus from their arrangement to Malcolm's fitness for authority. Board members' expressions changed subtly, reassessing the situation as a power play rather than a moral crisis. Richard Reynolds spoke next, his authority as founder carrying particular weight. Malcolm, in your eagerness to discredit Alexandra, you've admitted to surveillance of employees, invasion of privacy, and corporate espionage. The board will need to review these activities separately. The strategic redirection further undermined Malcolm's position, transforming him from whistleblower to potential liability. The momentum in the room visibly shifted, board members recalibrating their assessment of the situation. After intense discussion and private consultation, the board chairman announced their decision. Alexandra would retain her position pending review of all evidence presented. Malcolm would be placed on administrative leave during investigation of his information-gathering methods. The Takeshi contract would remain in force unless material breach could be proven. The corporate crisis contained, if not completely resolved. Alex and Jack departed Reynolds Technologies as heavy snow continued to fall across Chicago. The drive home through near whiteout conditions matched the emotional intensity of the day, visibility limited, progress difficult, but direction clear. In the elevator ascending to the penthouse, Alex finally broke the silence between them. What you said in there about walls and finding connection, was that part of our strategy, or was it real? Jack met her gaze directly, performance and pretense stripped away by the day's events. Every word. I've been afraid to admit how important you've become, how much I care about you. Afraid of what happens when our contract ends. Afraid of starting over again. The elevator doors open, revealing their shared home, the space that had transformed from arrangement to reality, from performance to life. Victoria and Sophie looked up from the kitchen counter where they were decorating snowman-shaped cookies. Domestic normalcy, a stark contrast to the corporate battlefield they just left. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep and Victoria had departed, Alex joined Jack on the snow-covered terrace, both bundled against the cold but unwilling to remain inside. The city below had disappeared behind white curtains of continuing snowfall, isolating them in their own world high above Chicago. What happens now to us? The question contained multitudes, professional implications, personal possibilities, the future of the household they'd built. Alex moved closer, snowflakes catching in her hair and on her eyelashes, softening her usual polished appearance. Our contract has 7 months remaining. We could maintain the status quo, see it through as planned, or... She hesitated, uncharacteristic uncertainty replacing her usual decisive approach. Jack completed the thought she seemed unwilling to voice. Or we could renegotiate, create something new based on what we've become rather than what we planned. Alex's expression opened with vulnerable hope. What exactly would those new terms entail? Jack brushed snowflakes gently from her cheek. No terms, no contract. Just us choosing each other day by day, building something real. In the silence that followed, snowfall muffling the city sounds below, Alex closed the remaining distance between them. Her kiss contained answer more eloquent than words, acceptance of possibility, acknowledgement of transformation, willingness to step beyond calculation into something neither could control or predict. Jack's arms encircled her, the embrace no longer performance, but authentic connection. Two people who had found unexpected belonging in what began as transaction. The snow continued falling around them, covering the penthouse terrace in pristine white, nature's own clean slate, mirroring the one they now offered each other. 7 months later, Jack stood in the backyard of a newly purchased home in Chicago's North Side, modest by Reynolds standards, but spacious compared to his former apartment. The property included a detached garage he had converted into a satellite location of Miller Auto, allowing him to maintain his business while balancing family responsibilities. Sophie raced across the lawn. Her respiratory health significantly improved under Dr. Patel's care, her energy boundless as she directed the placement of party decorations. Emma from her class needs the balloon arch, perfect for the science club photo. Jack adjusted the colorful arch spanning the garden entrance. The Reynolds-Miller Science Academy's first official meeting deserved proper celebration, even if the academy consisted primarily of Sophie and her friends conducting experiments under adult supervision. A familiar Tesla pulled into the driveway and Alex emerged carrying additional science supplies. Her corporate wardrobe had given way to casual elegance on weekends, designer jeans, and simple blouses replacing power suits when away from Reynolds Technologies. The sight of her still created a surge of appreciation in Jack, not just for her beauty, but for the person she had revealed herself to be beneath corporate armor. The woman who now coached Sophie's science club with the same intensity she brought to board meetings. The partner who had chosen connection over calculation, vulnerability over control. Their arranged marriage had officially ended 3 months earlier, the contract's termination marked by quiet celebration rather than separation. In its place stood something neither had anticipated: a relationship chosen freely, a family created through intent rather than obligation. Alex crossed the lawn, pausing to straighten the balloon arch before joining him. The Takeshi representatives are coming to the science presentation. Mr. Takeshi's granddaughter is visiting from Tokyo and apparently loves volcanoes. Jack laughed at the continuing intersection of corporate and family life. You Reynolds women can't help mixing business with pleasure. Alex's smile held contentment that had once seemed impossible for the driven CEO. Some arrangements work out better than originally planned. She glanced toward the house where Sophie was organizing her fellow young scientists with clipboard and checklist, a miniature version of Alex's methodical approach. The sight completed a circle neither Jack nor Alex could have envisioned when drafting their initial contract, the genuine family that had emerged from what began as performance. Sophie looked up from her clipboard, catching them watching her. She waved imperiously, pointing to her wrist where no watch existed. Hurry up. Science waits for no one. Jack and Alex exchanged amused glances at the familiar phrase, one of Alex's corporate mantras Sophie had adopted as her own. They moved toward the house hand in hand, no audience requiring the gesture, no contract specifying the connection. Just two people who had discovered that sometimes the most binding agreements are the ones never written down at all.